Find the fascinating phenomenon the halachas and minhagim of Hanukkah. While ordinarily much of Hilchas Hanukkah revolves around the menorah and the mitzvah of halal laholdes ula halal, there's a significant discussion in rabbinic literature, halachic literature, and poskim revolving around Mischakei Hanukkah, games on Hanukkah, gambling, betting, dreidel, and a gamut of other activities. The poskim seem to be very concerned and busy with the discussion about what games are permitted and prohibited on Hanukkah, the propriety of playing games on Hanukkah. Is it Assur? Is it Muttar? Is it a Minhag? Or is it a Machlokes? Let's take a look at the poskim and see how they discuss this fascinating area of Hilchos Hanukkah. We'll begin with Rabbi Yaakov Emden of the 1700s in 3 different places. Rabbi Yaakov Emden opposes and significantly, heavily abolishes the custom that seems to exist in Klal Yisrael of betting and gambling in Hanukkah. In Himor Rabbi Yaakov Emden's running commentary on Shulchan Aruch Arachaim, he writes in Siman Tov Reish Ayin, Pshita sheish limchos biad mishugoyim halalu. We should be mocha, we should oppose the mishugoyim shekovim osam l'schok yom v'layla lo yishpasu. People are playing games day and night throughout Hanukkah. Porshim yeshuva shalom lischok amartim hulal oile naim shekach ros va'ashrei mi shivyado limchos umoche bevadai hareze meshubach umhulal. Instead of being mishabeach and mahalel on the neros of Hanukkah, and the nisim of Hanukkah, the nes of the milchama, the nes of the pachsham, and instead people, says Rabbi Yaakov Emden, are focusing significantly on playing games and are wasting their time, fooling around and joking around. That's not what should be done. We should be mocha, we should abolish, and we should stringently oppose such behavior and such practice. 2 places Rabbi Yaakov writes about this in the Mora'im, the beginning of Hilchos Hanukkah, and the end of Hilchos Hanukkah, as well as in his famed Siddur Beis Yaakov. Clearly there was something happening that Rabbi Yaakov Emden needed to and was forced to respond to oppose and to abolish this practice. But it's not just Rabbi Yaakov Emden. Aruch HaShulchan as well, Siman Tov Reish Ayin, the Psich, the beginning of Hilchos Hanukkah, writes, Hasochim beklafim, people are playing with cards. Onshon rov, their punishment will be great. This has become a very evil, difficult, painful procedure that is taking place in Klal Yisrael. There are terrible transgressions that come along with playing cards, with gambling and betting. Like Rabbi Yaakov Emden says there, Rabbi Chil Michal Epstein in the 1800s, that we should be mocha and rabbanim should be mocha. Somebody who will abolish and who stands strong will receive unbelievable and great bounty and reward for abolishing this practice. Again, what's happening and why is the Aruch HaShulchan forced to write and to pen about the significance about this game playing, betting and gambling, that this minhag ra should be abolished? But it's not just Rabbi Yaakov Emden. It's not just the Aruch HaShulchan, but the Mishnah Berurah as well, in the very same Siman Tov Reish Ayin, the beginning of Hilchos Hanukkah, writes, Ubavonoseinu harabim yesh anashim shetachas zmiros v'sishpachos shiroi lahalol Hashem yisbarach lanisim shasa lanu inu marmarbim b'schok hakartin v'harbe hirishu hasfar makdoshim hazeh v'ashomer nafsho yirchuk mizeh. Clearly the Mishnah Berurah is aware of the earlier rabbinic literature and the poskim of the rabbanim who were opposing this practice. And again, like the Aruch HaShulchan, like Rabbi Yaakov Emden, says the Behalacha, this is inappropriate behavior. Marbim b'schok hakartin v'harbe hirishu alzeh hashomer nafsho yirchuk mizeh. So it's the Mishnah Berurah, the Aruch HaShulchan, it's the Mora'im, all opposing this practice in the 1700s, in the 1800s, and the early 1900s. Where is this coming from? And why did these Gedolei HaPoskim, and why are they forced to respond with such antagonism? This minhag actually dates back very early in Ashkenaz to Germany in the 1400s, the Tshuva, the Mari Bruna. Rabbi Shlomi Bruna in his Tshuva Siman Kuf Lamed Vav, who the Rama regularly quotes and leans upon. For much of minhag Ashkenaz, writes in his Tshuva Siman Kuf Lamed Vav, Maisa, there's a story. Shehakal asu takana shelo lischok, there was a enforcement, an enactment, and a proclamation, a takana, that there should be no gambling, no betting, and no card playing throughout the year. Elim came biyom shenomrim ma'otchina. You could play cards, you could bet, you could gamble. Misachik b'kuvya was permitted on days when there's tachnun would not be said. Ubechanukah ukihai gavna mutar lischok. Days like Hanukkah and other similar days, you can play. What about the night after Hanukkah? The Mari Brona has a discussion about this in this very same tshuva, a back and forth, whether or not it will be permitted or not. What seems to emerge from the tshuva of the Mari Brona is that there was a takana not to play cards, not to gamble, not to bet throughout the year. Mesachek B'Kovi was a problem that seems to be in Ashkenaz that Klal Yisrael was struggling with. So as a concession, the Mari Bruna said, it was mutter to do when? Yomim she'ein ombrim botchina kechanukah. It seems that on Hanukkah was one of those 8 days that throughout the year that there was license and permission that the Gedolei Yisrael gave to play cards, to gamble and to bet. Not necessarily the Chatchila, but the Mari Bruna understands as well as the other Gedolei Ashkenaz that because the only way we can impact Klal Yisrael and to ensure that they wouldn't gamble and bet throughout the course of the year, will concede and allow it during the Mei Hanukkah. That's what was happening in the 1400s. But not only that, if you continue and watch and follow Jewish history and halacha and poskim and minhag, you see the same thing continues in Germany. In the Minhagim of Vermaiza, the city of worms, the Kila Kedosha, Rabbi Yosef Shemesh, Rabbi Yuspa Shemesh, and his Minhagei Kila Kedosha of Worms, writes that in the year 1638, Harav HaChasid Av Bezdin Marina Rabbi Yamin HaKohen Cohen, Rabbi Yamin HaKohen placed a cherem. Shlolischok shum schok en kartin o kubios o eze schok shihia. So in the year 1638, Rabbi Yamin Cohen enacted a proclamation that there should be no card playing, no gambling, no betting at all in the city of Worms. V'chein hayomer kol hashana kuna, and this was established throughout the course of the year. Rak beChanukkah hayamatir b'schok mitchilas leil rishon ad acher Hanukkah samizbeach. However, for the 8 nights of Hanukkah, from night number 1 until night number 8, it was permitted. V'nispashet dos leminhag kavua. It became an established custom that throughout the Yemei Hanukkah, one was permitted to gamble, to bet, and to play cards. When Rabbi Binyamin Cohen moved from Worms to the city of Prague, the minhag continued in Worms that card playing, betting, and gambling was permitted during the 8 days of Hanukkah. And even after he passed away into the Olam Emes, moved from the city of Worms to the city of Krakow, it continued. Lios leminhag kavua v'kiyem ma'amaro b'hanhagos iser b'schok ad hayom hazeh rak b'kila kedosha b'Chanukkah haynogim heter b'schok, only on Hanukkah. So again, a concession was made not only by the Mari Brona, not only by Rabbi Yuspa Shemesh and Vermaiza, and not only was this true in the city of Worms as well as in other cities including Prague, there was a concession that was made. There was a problem throughout the year. And as a result of this problem that existed throughout the year, the Gedolei Ashkenaz conceded that during Hanukkah, which is Yimei Halel Vehodah, that's a nice time that we allow and give license and permission for Klal Yisrael to rest back, to kick up their feet, and to play cards. However, the Chavas Yair, who also was a Rav in the city of Worms, in the year 1600, he died in 1702, writes the following about his father. V'nahirna karavina tali, I remember since I was being a child. Nimnu v'rabu balei takanos. There were many enactments, proclamations, gzeros, and takanos that were made, specifically by my father. Lishanos minhag kadum, to change an ancient custom. Hanog shlo lischok kol hashana rak b'mei Hanukkah. There was an old custom that dates back to the 1400s in Germany and in Worms and in Prague and throughout cities in Eastern Europe that card playing, betting, gambling was permitted during Hanukkah. V'heira be'eni adoni avi hachasid. My father was very disturbed and bothered by this custom. Shu yemei nes Hanukkah kfuim lahodos lahalam yuchadim l'stok v'kalos rosh. My father wouldn't be able to tolerate that. How could it be that as a result of the Yimei Halel v'hodah of Hanukkah, the Yimei Nisim and Iflo shenasu lavosenu, instead of playing cards or gambling or betting? How could that be? Ubikesh lo'osram v'lekvoa tachteim ches yemei edam. And instead, Chavas Yair, Rabbi Arbachrach's father, wanted to displace the minhag of card playing, betting, and gambling of the 8 days of Hanukkah, and move it to the 8 days of the holidays between December 25th and January 1st. Just like there are 8 days of Hanukkah, there are also 8 secular holiday dates between January 1st and December 25th. Play cards then, you're off anyway. Don't waste your time and don't sit idly during Yemei Hanukkah playing cards. That's not the way one should focus their energy and their day and their ruchnias and gashmias during Hanukkah. That one should enjoy, have Sudas Hanukkah, Shiros v'sishmachu, sing and dance, and be mispalel that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should bring us nisim bayam b'mayim bazman hazeh. And instead, what are people doing? They're playing cards, they're gambling, and they're betting. So the Chavas Yoy's father attempted to replace the minhag of card playing from the 8 days of Hanukkah and move it to the 8 days between the 25th of December and the 1st of January. Was he successful or was he not? Says the Chavas Yair, he was unsuccessful. Also biyado, my father wasn't successful. Kilo hiskimu lishanos minhag. They didn't agree to change this minhag. So what we're seeing develop in the 1400s, 1500s, 1600s, and early 1700s was a concession by the rabbanim to attempt to stop card playing throughout the year and instead to focus on it during Hanukkah. And we see that the Rabbanim felt that this was preferable to card playing throughout the year. However, the Chavas Yair had a little bit of a knetch, a little bit of an addendum. While we need to give the people time to play cards, to bet, and to gamble, and to kick their feet up, not on Hanukkah. Rather, allow that to take place during the secular holiday season in order that that shouldn't be a problem. It's interesting this year that those days are merged at December 25th through January 1st as the exact dates of Hanukkah. And thus the Chavas Yair suggested that that's what his father tried to enact. But as he says, La'olsa biyado, he wasn't successful. Fascinating how Gedol Yisrael had to balance and try to figure out how to address a tzara and a nega tzaras in Klal Yisrael. And thus we begin to see why it is that the Mishnah Berurah, the Aruch HaShulchan, the Moreh Ketziah came out antagonistic and fought this with tooth and nail. Maybe they already felt in the 1700s and the 1800s and the early 1900s that this problem no longer existed, and therefore there shouldn't be a focus on Hanukkah of gambling, betting, and card playing. And therefore they came out strongly antagonizing and being mocha b'kol kocham not to do so during Yemei Hanukkah. But interestingly enough, if we move from Germany to Hungary, we can find that not all Gedol Yisrael took the very same approach. And we're not willing to concede, but Adarabba supported the practice, and none other than the Chassam Sofer. And the Chassam Sofer writes, it's found in his Tshuvas Kobitz Tshuvas Siman Lamed Beis. It's also found in the well-known Igros Sofrim of the Chassam Sofer Siman Gimel, where the Chassam Sofer writes that he's aware of Amanati Ala Nisayon. I saw what happens when we establish strong practices, minhagim and takanos, not to do something. Ki amram ki aschok al hazman hazeh matov. It's a good thing to allow people to enjoy, to rest, to relax, to bet, and to gamble. And during the time where people were gambling, it was also a Yom Tov. It was Hanukkah. And instead of gambling, betting, and card playing, they decided that they wouldn't do that and they would prohibit such behavior. Ra'isi Beinai says, the Chassam Sofer, I saw with my own eyes. Ki al yidei zeh bo lekama inyoni Machlokes v'lashon hara b'yosem b'telim mimasem amatam. If people are not working and there's nothing to do, they wind up being over isurim, transgressing and sinning. And that's what I saw. They were being over on Isur, Machlokes, and Lashon Hara. V'ata ki yodam asuros habatala meveli deharbe michsholim. Amarti so b'nei avim heim v'kadmonenu henegu kein. There's an interest in doing what's right and behaving appropriately. V'neachshav b'noseinu harabim lo yishmu lanu l'shmoa b'limudim kol hayom v'sheres halayla. People can't learn, they can't study all day. It's impossible. Al ken yavo lekitata v'hashchasa al ken en roy losa, says the Chassam Sofer. Don't prohibit this, and don't prohibit on Hanukkah, because what's going to happen is people won't have what to do. It's impossible. They're unable to learn all day. And if you can't learn all day, what are you going to do? You'll do other Isurim. There's Lashon Hara, there's Machlokes, there's Isurim, there's transgressions. Let the people play cards. Let them gamble. Let them bet. Let them do that, what they're doing. It's an old minhag. That's what happened, and it didn't work. It was unsuccessful. It was counterproductive. Because when you Assur card playing, gambling, and betting, they wind up doing other Isurim. So therefore, the Chassam Sofer, as opposed to the Gedolim of Germany, who conceded and allowed card playing during those 8 days, And it seems that was only a bidiyevit so that they wouldn't do so during the course of the year, says the Chassam. So it's lechatchila. Let them do it, because if they don't do it, it's going to only be worse. And the Chassam Sofer son, the Ksav Sofer, had a Talmud, and the Talmud's name was Rabbi Chaim Sonnenfeld, the Rav of Yerushalayim, who moved from Hungary to Yerushalayim. And he in his Tshuva Salmas Chaim, or Chaim Simon Shin Samach Gimel, writes the very same thing. Responding to whether or not card playing, betting, gambling on Hanukkah is okay or not okay, the propriety of it. There's a time to play. There's a time to have a good time. Maybe Hanukkah is that time. You know why they established? So that they wouldn't be mishomenim. They wouldn't be bored and do inappropriate behavior. Not everybody could sit and learn. Not everybody could just focus on a blat gemara day and night. Don't question Minhagei. The old minhag is to play cards, and the old minhag is to bet, and the old minhag is to gamble on Hanukkah. Don't question that behavior. Am kadosh ki al deze lo yifnu ledvarim acherim yoser gruim lishmoa chadashos v'chadam. Instead, people will be talking politics. Let them instead play cards and to gamble and bet. It's a minhag Yisrael Torah. Fascinating as we see different dynamics play themselves out in the poskim as to how to deal with card playing, betting, gambling, Mischakei Hanukkah. The approach of the Aruch HaShulchan, the Mishnah Brura, the Mora Kutzir of Yaakov Emden was to prohibit this behavior. And so much so, Ashrei, praiseworthy, Scharo Harbe Mo, to the Rabbanim and the Gedolim who would oppose this behavior and this practice. Maybe in that time period, the 1718 and the early 1900s, it was already time and it was appropriate to oppose and banish and abolish such behavior. But earlier in Jewish history, in the 1400s, 1500s, and 1600s, in Germany, we see from the Gedolei Germania, the Marie Brunner, Bisson Bruno, we see from all of the Gedolim, including the Minhagim, Rabbi Yosef of Worms, Rabbi Yosef Shemesh and the Chavas Yair, who were willing to concede to allow such behavior and to allow those individuals in Klal Yisrael to play, because if you don't, then what's going to happen throughout the course of the year, as opposed to Chassam Sofer B'Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld, who said, it's lechatchila, allow it to happen. These are the three different approaches that we find in three different generations as to how to react to Mischakei Hanukkah, all during this time of year. But is there any game, and is there any mischak that's mutter lechatchila? Is there any activity, behavior, or playfulness that could take place on Hanukkah that everybody would agree is okay, that everybody would say is mutter? Min hakotze lakotze. Well, why not dreidel? Dreidel should be the ultimate mischak of Hanukkah that should be absolutely permitted, because it's such an ancient minhag that goes back such a long time. We are all familiar with what we learned in nursery school, kindergarten, in cheder, and in day school, and in grade school, that it's okay to play dreidel, not just okay, but it's a minhag Yisrael Torah, like the Bnei Yissaschar writes, minhag Yisrael Torah, asher minhag b'mei Hanukkah misachak im Nora'im. Hine minhag azay hamikudam nog Yisrael. It's an ancient, old custom. How old is the custom to play dreidel? After all, the Bnei Yissaschar says it's a minhag kadam. So if you look in the Seforim of the Gedolei Ashkenaz, the Gedolei Seforim, the Minhag Seforim, the Halacha Seforim, the Tur, the Beis Yosef, the Shulchan Aruch, the Ramah, the Mariel, and the Manig, in the Sifrei Minhagim of the Rishonim Achronim, nothing at all about a dreidel. It doesn't exist. Not in the Zman of the Rishonim, and not in the early Gedolei Achronim, and not in the Marshal, not in the Maharil. We see nothing about the dreidel. It doesn't exist. Moreover, what we were taught is that the reason we play dreidel on Hanukkah is for specifically the reason that in the times of the Chashmonaim, when the Yevonim and the Misyavnim saw and heard rumors that Klal Yisrael was learning Torah b'chabura in groups, quickly we would hide, and instead of learning Torah b'tzafs in a group, we would take out a game, we would take out the menorah, we would spin the dreidel, and then the Yevonim and the Misyavnim would go away because they saw that we were learning Torah. Where's that from? And again, if you look in the early Rishonim and the early Achronim, you see no source to that ancient reason, tam, for the minhag of dreidel playing. The earliest source that I was able to track down and to find is in a very fascinating sefer, Otzar Kol Minhagei Yeshurun, written by Rabbi Avram Eliezer Hershkovitz, Ish Kovna, Yelid Kovna. Sefer has a haskama from the Rav of Kovna, the Gadol B'Yisrael, Rab Yitzchak Elchanan Spector, there he writes that this is a very wonderful sefer who brings terrific examples of minhagim and the timing for the minhagim. This sefer was written in the 1800s. Rav Hershkovitz died in the early 1900s. And he, as far as I'm aware, is the first printed source to explain that the basis for playing Dreidel on Hanukkah is because that's what happened Bizmei Chashmonaim. Take a look. Otzer Kol Minhag Assur and Perik Yotes Ozdalet Hayelodim Misachakim Bechanukkah B'Mischak Gal Galan Dreidel. And Hatam Ki Gazer Shalom Muttar explains that this is the reason. What's his source? Harav Bal Mechaber Sefer Avodas Sevet Sefer Tiferes Tzvi Umevio Harav Ziv. We can't find this reason in any of these places cited by Rabbi Hershkovitz. So what then is the basis in the Makor for Dreidel? Of course, it's a minhag, and of course one should and can, is permitted to. Chasam Sofer one night of a dreidel, played Dreidel with a silver Dreidel. Chazanish spin the Dreidel once. But is there any basis and is there any reason? The Bnei Yissaschar writes it's a minhag kadam in Allah. The Hasidic Seforim we find the importance of playing Dreidel, even in the Kobitz Halachas, Hilchas Chanukah, Likutei Halachos. Rabbi Nosson of Breslov, quoting from this father, Rabbi Nachman Breslov, writes about Noagim Gam Kadmonim Atzadikim Lasachik B'Chanukah B'Minei Schok Shel Heter. That's what they did. That's the Dreidel. And in many of the Hasidic Seforim of the 1700s, you see significant focus on the mischak of Dreidel, which is absolutely a minhag of Heter. It's not considered gambling or betting or gambling in an inappropriate way. And there's no Makoros telling us that it's inappropriate, that it's wrong, that it's Assur, like we find when it comes to gambling and betting and playing the games that we referred to earlier. But we do seem to see and learn that it's not an old minhag of Ashkenaz, it's not an old minhag of Sfarad, it's not found in the Minhagim of the Rishonim and the Minhagim of the Anshe Chasidim of Ashkenaz, nor in the Minhagim of Sfarad, but nonetheless, in Hasidic Sfarim of the 1700s, this became a very critical minhag of Hanukkah, and thus from there it seems to be that that's where it emerged in Klal Yisrael, in all sectors, amongst Hasidim and Misnagdim, amongst Ashkenaz and amongst Sfardim, but not earlier than that. But besides for gambling and betting, and besides for playing Dreidel, we do find other customs as well of mischakim that take place. In the Sefer Taimim and Hagim Mekari Adirim, in the Kuntrus Achron, Siman Taf Mem Tes, he quotes B'Shem Arav Atzadik HaKadosh, Morein Rab Nachum Ishtupanesht. And I quote, should be Mechaniko Bapamachas Pisum El Beis Midrash. The Rebbe, Reb Parnesh, entered the Beis Medrash and Mahala quickly. V'hineize anoshim yoshvim u'misachakim b'mischak hadam. The Bachrim were playing in the Beis Medrash, the mischak, the game of dam, which I would venture to say is Dominos. Ukashero ki rabbam nitzav alehem. When they saw that their Rebbe caught them in the act of playing Dominos, nisvahalu ma'od. They got frightened and scared. What's the Rebbe gonna do? Upasach was dibros kocho. He opened up his holy mouth. V'ana v'amer hayedatem es klale mischak adam. Do you know how to play Dominos? V'shasku, they were silenced. Amar lemani agid lachem, I'll teach you. I'll tell you exactly how to play the instructions. I know perfectly how to play Dominos. V'agid lachem asa klale me'adam, and I'll tell you exactly all the intricacies, the complexities, and all of the moves in Dominos. V'himshich lahazbe b'diyuk es prate mischak. He went on to tell them very carefully, specifically and exactingly, how to play the game called Dam. If you take a look in the time of Minhagim, he writes in Yiddish several lines, all of the Pirtei Pratim, exactly how this Rebbe described how to play the game of Dominos. So here you see again that the mischakim of Hanukkah are correlated and related to Yomei Hanukkah. But there's even another mischak, another game. And this can be found indeed in the Sifri Rishon, the Leket Yosha, the Talmud of the Trumas Hadesh and Archaim. Amud Kufnun Gimel Inyan Aleph writes that there's the best Chanukah game of them all. The greatest mischak. B'chol Chanukah asu ktafos chida. Umiktsas bochrim min asugya shalom do al Chanukah ulefam al maldvar machelim. Mischakim of Torah, riddles, jokes, trying to figure out how many words are in a parsha, and trying to figure out gematrias. That the Leket Yosha says, that's the ultimate mischak of Hanukkah. What seems to emerge in the Gedolei Aposkim from the Rishonim till the Achronim is that part of Hanukkah is mischakim, games, as an expression to be able to experience the nisim of Hanukkah, not just through mitzvahs menorah, not just through the mitzvah lahodos ulahalel l'shabeach ulafor, not just through shiros and sishpachos, but sometimes even there's importance in game playing things that are not necessarily related to the Yom Tov Bifrat. Either because people need time to relax, they need time off, they need time to breathe, there's such intensity, and even the Yomim Tovim, which are a time off, be'etzem, from the mundane and the regular Sukkot, Pesach, Shavuos, Purim, there's avoda, there's mitzvos, there's obligations on Pesach and on Shavuos and on Sukkot and on Purim, there's mitzvos, there are obligations pre and post. Hanukkah allows us to do things a little bit easier, that doesn't have the Isser Melacha, that doesn't have other responsibilities, obligations of heavy mitzvahs. But Adarabba, mitzvahs ner Hanukkah, mitzvah chaviva hi mod. The Yemei Hanukkah are pleasant, are fun, are light. And therefore game playing seems to be a part of Hanukkah, which allows us to also feel the simchas hachag, to feel the essence of how HaKadosh Baruch Hu was Moshiach us from Oivim. And b'siyata d'shmaya, although we do find different approaches amongst the poskim, there does seem to be an element of finding time to indeed kick back, to relax, and finding appropriate venues allowing us for to play, to do activities and behaviors that we don't always have the opportunity to do. B'siyata d'shmaya, we should be zocha to the nisim of Hanukkah, to the fun of Hanukkah, to the joy and the simcha and the sason of Halal Hodan Hanukkah, both beruchnias and begashmias, wishing everybody a wonderful Hanukkah.